Hello! For my final presentation in psychopharmacology, I'm going to be talking today about the classification of drugs, mainly the class 1 through class 5 substances. Now, I think this is an important topic because drugs are not a static entity. They're dynamic, they're changing. And also, the other thing is not only are they dynamic, is they're everywhere. I know I personally take um, drugs daily. I take sertraline and montelukast, so it's a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, and then an anti-allergy drug every single day. And most people do as well. Take daily drug, multivitamins, everything from good stuff to the bad stuff. Drugs are always in use. And I think that's why how we classify them and how we display them to the public who aren't in the field of research or drug development is vitally important, especially in times of uncertainty of illness, such as this pandemic we're living in. People need to know what we know about drugs. I think what we know currently is that our system is rooted in years of development, years of trial and error, and we have a very, very good system. Yet, there are some shortcomings that we need to address. At least to me, that's my opinion. I think one of the biggest things that we need to address is what I said previously, is how we're classifying these drugs. There are certain drugs that are illegal that I don't believe they should be, and I think there are certain drugs that are legal over-the-counter prescription drugs that I think should be looked a bit more keenly on, and people should be a bit more skeptical. I think for the common people, in the United States and across the world, what you know about drugs is, whether you can get them over the counter or whether they're prescription, how you get them, how much they cost. That's the stuff that's important. So I think it's on us as psychopharmacology investigators to determine what drugs should be over the counter, what drugs should be prescription, because most people are going to view prescription drugs as completely okay. If this drug can be prescribed to me by a doctor, you're expecting that the doctor and science has done enough research that this drug is safe for you. That's not always the case, and it's something we need to think about. I think for each drug, we need to weigh the pros and cons. Thinking of drugs like marijuana, which is a class 1 substance, you need to weigh the pros and cons, is because there are both. And it's reflected that we aren't classifying correctly because there are benefits of marijuana use and that contradicts it being class 1 substance. It means there's no medical use for it. So we need to line up the research with our classification if we're going to have a proper system. So I think what I just said a few moments ago is this idea of weighing pros and cons is a great first start, is saying, okay, example, marijuana, lower than 18 negatively affects brain development. Okay, that's a con. Marijuana is highly related to the pain relief of marijuana is almost as much as some opioids. Okay, that's a pro. And then you would weight each drug accordingly. And then you get into the next classification is, okay, so there are all these good things and all these bad things for each drug. Now this goes for marijuana and illegal substances. This goes for Ritalin, Adderall. This goes for Benadryl and Motrin. Is pros and cons, how it affects us. And we don't know everything yet. So you balance it out that way. And then I think the next thing to think about, and probably the most important thing, is how we're dosing this drug. I think the very simple but so accurate and important rule of psychopharmacology is that there's a dose low enough to show no effect in humans, and there's a dose high enough to kill you. So we need to weigh drugs and say, okay, here are the good and bad aspects, and that should be applied to each patient who would receive these drugs. And we need to find a way that how do we maximize the pros of each drug to the patient via dose. How do we dose each drug to get more of the benefits of the drug and less of the negative aspects of the drug? And I think that's one of the key things that we need to figure out. So I think where we are now is in a culture that's starting to look at drugs a bit more critically, and I think it's very, very good. In a few years from now, I'd like to see us in a more open system, um, not just for drugs, but I think for information. I think it's been very clear to me, especially during this pandemic, the discrepancies of drug information and how it affects people, especially people who aren't on the edge of research in these fields. Pharmacology and psychology and all these science fields is how do you get drug information to them that's understandable and that benefits them. And I don't think we're doing that. So that's my presentation. I hope you enjoy, and I will see you soon, hopefully.